I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start with a land acknowledgement. The City of Belleville acknowledges we are meeting today on the traditional territory of many nations. The municipality operates on unceded and unsurrendered lands of our Indigenous peoples. We recognize and honor the historic relationships of the Indigenous peoples to this land and acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who call Belleville their home and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with them. We look forward to fostering a path forward to reconciliation and show respect for the Indigenous peoples who first lived and currently live on the land where we now all reside together. I will call this meeting to order. Note that Councillor Millette and Councillor Enright Miller are not here tonight. Please remain standing for a moment of reflection. City Clerk Matt McDonald.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Please be seated. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I have an indirect pecuniary interest on item 8B4. It's regarding Habitat for Humanity, and I'm the chair of the organization.
Okay, thank you for that. I need a motion for the reading and confirmation of minutes of the regular council meeting of June 26, 23, and the regular in-camera meeting minutes of June 26, 23. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Kelly, all in favor? Carried. Deputations, we'll start off with Stacey Dobb, President and CEO of Quinte Healthcare, will make a deputation to council. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor Ellis and the rest of council for inviting us to today to talk a little bit about Quinte Health and more specifically about physician recruitment, and just to give you a bit of an update on what's been happening and some of our progress, some of the challenge, and some of the trends that we face. I'm here with my colleague Susan Rowe today, who's a critical lead, provides a leadership role for physician recruitment and support to our teams, and she'd be happy to answer any detailed questions you might have today. So I want to first off start off by saying how incredibly appreciative we are of the partnership we have with the City of Belleville. You know, times have changed a lot. The hospital really is not going to be able to recruit and create a great hospital on its own, and having the partnership with the city has been incredibly important. And your investment in Karen's role and your continued investment and openness to work with us in new and different ways. You'll recall last council meeting, I think it was, that you had a presentation by Rod on Health Pulse and some of the partnership work we're doing across the counties. And it's becoming increasingly important to think about the future of both municipal planning and healthcare planning in a more integrated way. So thrilled that you guys have been at a leader in the pack in that. So I want to start with a little bit of context, because you can only really understand some of the challenges and opportunities we face if you understand the context that we're operating in. And I know last time Rod shared a slide that talked about some of the headlines, and you read it in the newspaper all the time, that there are a lot of challenges happening across the healthcare system. And quite honestly, they're years in the making, and however, they are different in different places for different reasons. It all depends on where you started at the beginning of the pandemic, and it also really depends on many characteristics of your own local health ecosystem. So that's where I want to start. And this slide that was included in your backgrounder really talks about the social determinants of health and just how unique our population is. And what I want to point out is that for the province of Ontario, when you take high-risk characteristics that see people being higher users of healthcare, the general Ontario population, about 16% of its population is high risk, where the population across Hastings Prince Edward is about 72%. So there is a much higher set of complex social determinants of health that impact people's accessing healthcare. We often hear that a lot of people are accessing healthcare who are lower risk. That is not the majority of our issue. While it is a challenge with a lack of primary care, our bigger issue is people who have really a lot of chronic health conditions, who are needing the use of the Emerge and our inpatient units. And if you compare us across Ontario, we have some of the highest use of hospitalization in the province of Ontario. So the hospital is receiving a tremendous demand, and it's partially a reflection of the population and the characteristics of that population. Not just social determinants of health, but also the age of the population. The age of our population is where in 20 years Ontario is terrified it's going to be as a population at whole. We're already there. So these are challenges, but also opportunities in the way that you think about healthcare and the way that you organizing your services. This is just a second illustration, but it also brings in the secondary issue that's really impacts the demand for Belleville General and the other 3 hospitals in the Quinte Health family, and that is availability of other services. So as you know, we have quite a significant primary care shortage that you've been working away at trying to support improvement to. But we also have lower than per capita mental health services, addiction services, and home care services. And so when those services aren't readily available in the community, the next closest substitute for some of those services are the hospital. So whether that someone has to be admitted because there aren't those services in the community, or they need to stay longer in the hospital. And we have many examples of both our length of stay and some of our beds being used for those purposes. These people are in need, and so some of the work that we have to do is work with our community partners to build new and different programs. We have a number of those underway with the Ontario Health Team and others. A great example is Quinte at Home. So that's a really innovative program that takes people who need high-intensity home care services home with a much more supportive set of services than would naturally or readily be available in our community. So we're continuing to work at that. We also have Quinte Gardens, which is now a 24-bed transitional care unit that is at Quinte Gardens, another place. So you're not in the hospital, but you're in a supportive environment to get you one step closer to home. I'm pretty proud of our team. We've done a lot of, I think, innovative work over the last couple of years in terms of trying to build community capacity or advocate for more community capacity. So this kind of is the underlying context for the demand that we're feeling. We were talking earlier today that the hospital has never felt such demand, both of its inpatient unit as well as its emerges. So challenging. I think this gives a good illustration of just how quickly we've grown over the last number of years, and there's 2 reasons for this growth. So on the one side, you see our medicine beds. So those are really for the sickest people in our community. It's grown by about 70%. And on the right side is oncology, and oncology is it's a good news story, but also a bit of a challenge. Oncology growth is more about bringing care closer to home. So we have grown the program, and so there are many more people, residents and citizens, who are getting service in their own community rather than having to travel to other areas. But the medicine growth is really a direct consequence of the earlier trends that we're seeing in our community. Add to that just the general population growth that we're having, and that is what has added up. And while many places in the province, they have a very significant, both a recruitment and a retention problem, we have a growth problem. So when you grow by 70%, any of you who think about whether you're city services or other services, our ability to try and keep up with a 70% growth in our medicine units has been really challenging. So we, in the last year, we have hired net 100 people across Quinte Health. From March 31st to July 1st of this year, we've hired 150 staff, so we are hiring people. It is just difficult to close the gap between the demand and the growth in services and trying to get people in play. For certain, there were some people who transitioned out after the pandemic, but mostly for us, it was a number of years of retirements that had been delayed. So you saw a lot of retirements happening at the end of the pandemic because there are a lot of people who stayed. But I wouldn't say we have a large-scale retention issue. We worry about it all the time because the volumes and the staffing levels are so challenging for people on a day-to-day basis. This is why we need new and innovative ways from the community programs to, I think we've probably doubled the numbers of volunteers in our hospitals. So you'll see when you come in the Emerge and other places, there are extra volunteer helping hands who are trying to support the teams. We've also been working with Loyalist and the college to bring in healthcare aides, other students. So lots of ways to try and augment and support our teams. And then we have a whole host of recruitment and retention pieces of work. We hired a recruitment and retention specialist, and that's all she spends her time on, is thinking about how we can support our teams. But today, given that backdrop, I want to talk a little bit about physicians. So given the recent conversations at council, I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. So on your left, you will see these are the places that we have opportunities for physician roles. Emergency medicine's a relatively new one. This is something new, a new phenomena in the province, where there are a lot more gaps in emergency medicine than there used to be. So we have gaps in emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, anesthesia, psychiatry, clinical neurology, and infectious diseases. Most of those are an N, or many of those are an N of 1, but emergency medicine, family medicine, and anesthesia and internal medicine and psychiatry are our biggest challenges, and there is a lot of competition out there for them. Just to give you a sense, we are still a very great place for people to come, and I think one of our biggest benefits is the paradise that we live in. So over the last year, we have seen 7 new recruits of full-time physicians, so obstetrics, 2 in internal medicine, emergency medicine, radiology, pediatrics, and orthopedic surgeon. We've had 40 locums, and I'll speak to locums in a second because I think they're quite interesting. And we have 2 internal medicine and 1 pediatric physician going through the process. A number of these individuals have been international medical graduates, so you hear a lot about that in the news as well, and the processes that people have to go through to actually become a practicing physician. We have many retention strategies aimed at our physicians, but we also have many partnerships. So the municipal partnership is a really important partnership. It gives us the opportunity to work in tandem with you, not only to highlight the opportunities at the hospital, but in the broader community, and to work to integrate them in a really successful way. We have used recruitment firms for the first time. We hadn't really used recruitment firms. We've been working with those to see if there's opportunities, especially as you think about the international medical graduates, and you have people who know that world a lot better than us. And as I've mentioned, we've been working on international medical graduate recruits. Some of the trends we're seeing, so one is a work-life balance, no different than most industries. People are making choices not only about how long they work, but how much they work. And so we are seeing some groups choose to work less, or maybe to have more diversity in their work, and that's had an impact on the availability. We are seeing a trend of people, particular physicians, trying out roles, so a lot more locums. So oftentimes people would come out and sign up for a role. Now, I think even through the universities, people are being encouraged to try out locums. We've been quite successful in the locum recruitment, and the idea with locum is you get them into the community, you get them into the hospital, and you do your best to try and really get them to see what a wonderful both hospital but also a community is, so that you can stay. Competition is, in a word, really fierce. So it used to be that smaller, medium, and northern communities had a lot of difficulty, but these gaps, like in emergency medicine, they're everywhere across the province. And so the competition has just gotten much larger than smaller and medium and northern communities competing. Now you're competing with many other, you're also competing across the country and internationally, as there is lots of competition. I think the good news is there are a lot of people who want to come to Canada to practice medicine, and there are a lot of people, meet a lot of people who want to return to the east, to perhaps where they grew up to practice medicine. So there's opportunities, and we just have to really highlight and find the right group of people that match what we are offering. The licensing process, which you hear a lot about, is still really long. So these 3 individuals that I'm indicating that are in process, it's taken us a year. It takes a long time to work them through the process and the licensing in order to get here. Many of the international medical graduates also require supervised practice, so they've limited that for some of the countries like Australia and Ireland, but other countries you still require that. And we can only manage so many supervised practices at the same time. And then just last, an ongoing kind of trend or challenge for us is ensuring that the spouses are able to find employment, and that families who want to relocate have access to housing, childcare, all the kind of practical aspects of things that they're looking for. And, you know, even increasingly, as of late, we've been talking about, you know, culturally appropriate activities in the community, and with the International Festival on the weekend, we surely have a lot to show about the growing diversification of the city and opportunities to match. So with that, I will pass it back to the Mayor and see if there are any questions for Susan or I.
Is there any questions for deputation? Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Ms. Dobb, for coming today. Obviously, the hospital can't be everything to everybody. You talk about community health. Can you just give us an idea as to what you think the capacity or need is for more primary care physicians, urgent care clinics, after-hour clinics, anything that would take relief off of what you're experiencing at your hospital sites?
Sure. So the Ontario Health Team that presented here last time is really trying to run down the very specific numbers about the primary care shortages. Many people use something called Healthcare Connects as the way to measure access. And if I have one message for the residents of Belleville, if you don't have a physician, you should sign up for Healthcare Connect because it's one way for us to measure how many people don't have physicians. We only have what I would call proxy measures at the hospital because most of this information comes through the ministry. And a great example, you know, for every 100 babies born, 20 of them don't have a family physician. In our oncology clinic recently, when we did a review, for every 100 patients served, 25 of those didn't have a physician. Those are much higher than the numbers that I've seen early days from some of the other evidence that talks about 14 to 15% of our population not having access. But there is another issue impacting primary care access. It's also access to the practice. So some of the practices, you know, have lost physicians, and so their ability to see people in a timely way. And I don't in any way want to disparage primary care. I think they have a very tough job in our community, and I think they are working extremely hard. But it's one of the other issues. If you can't get timely access, sometimes if someone needs timely access, they'll go to the hospital instead. So in my mind, primary care and home and community care, we need to build those foundations outside the walls of the hospital, and we're intending to partner to support that, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. On the urgent care clinics, we ran a couple of really successful pilots last year during respiratory season. We ran what were called respiratory clinics. We had very high volumes, and it was just a better way for people to actually be served.
A couple more questions, if I could. So in addition to the community care, you talked about the fact that physician attraction is difficult, not just locally, but provincially, nationally, and you even said internationally. Mm-hmm. Could you give us some idea as to why that is the case? Is it people that are not wanting to get into medicine, or is it limited positions within medical schools? Obviously, you know, you mentioned it today, and I've read about the impediments to international trained physicians trying to get qualifications in Canada. But just in terms of why are we seeing such low numbers that way?
So I think there are two things that are at play, and you know, I'm not an extreme expert in this field, but I have enough knowledge to at least share some perspective. So I think the first one is really health force planning. So you know, just like you do municipal planning, how do we plan for the needs of population growth over time? I'm really pleased that the ministry has hired a new Dr. Karima Belji. She is the new Assistant Deputy Minister, and she's responsible. She's the Chief Nursing and Interprofessional Practice Lead for the ministry, and she's also doing health workforce planning. And I think one of the phrases that she used to me in terms of the past is a bit of feast and famine, right? You go through these periods of time, whereas I think her goal is really to think about long-term health force planning and then to plan accordingly. Both the seats in school are definitely an issue right now for every program, physio, OT, nursing, and physicians. There's certainly, you hear sometimes people say anecdotally that people are not wanting to go into healthcare. There are many more applicants to all the healthcare professions than there are spots. The other thing I would say is that I think for some professions, I think primary care is a great example. The best way to practice primary care is with an interprofessional team surrounding you and supporting you. And in Belleville, we don't have as large interprofessional teams supporting our local physicians, and I think that's something we need to keep working at.
Okay, and then finally, my last question is, and your presentation you provided today gave a little bit of a snapshot of what our community is. I forget, a number of months ago, you hosted the Minister of Health,
Yes.
MPP Smith and MPP Bariz. Did they get that presentation and that picture? The reason why I asked that is municipalities, I've said this before, we should be worrying about snow plowing and potholes and things of that nature, and we're getting pushed into the medical side of things to fill a vacuum, I think, in a lot of ways. But what is being said in those conversations about the picture in our community when you show them with higher, high risk outcomes in terms of health and other diseases that we experience that are a higher rate than the province? Does it sound like there's reception in terms of resources we need to make sure that people stay healthy?
So I would say we got an exceptional reception by both the Minister of Health and the two local MPPs. And our primary ask in that meeting, quite honestly, is we need to be funded for those beds. So we're operating about 100 beds beyond our current funding, and that is a real big issue for us. And they have been great about trying to work through the process of how we would go about funding those beds. So that was the primary ask of those meetings, and we continue to have discussions with them and with the ministry in terms of next steps to try and figure out a way to fill that gap. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot going on in healthcare right now, but I understand Quinte Health is at the top of the list. So I'm very optimistic about that. Our second ask was that I think the ministry, it's almost like you need a ministry for smaller communities or rural communities. Our needs are different, the solutions are different here. You're right, if you go to Toronto or you go to Hamilton or you go to Oshawa, there are diagnostic imaging clinics, there's walk-in clinics. I'm not saying that those are all the greatest way to deliver healthcare, but there are far many more options than there are here. We need rural and smaller community solutions, and I think we need to open up an avenue for that. Our current equity plans in the Ministry of Health does not include rural or smaller communities, and I think that there are really significant equity challenges in terms of health outcomes, but also access.
Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Stace, for coming. I got two questions, if I may.
Sure.
The one is relating to the ambulances. And I chair the EMS for the city, for Hastings County. My concern is, and I give credit to the ambulance because they're doing a lot of home visits.
Yes.
That's relieving the hospital. But the other in turn is our ambulances are being delayed at the hospital. So is there anything that the hospital can do further to sort of relieve that so our ambulances can get back out on the road? Because when we stretch them to do the home visits, and then they're stuck in the hospital. So if I can get you to answer that, and I have one more question after that.
Sure, so I'm going to try and be really brief on this one. So we do a ton of work with Hastings Paramedic Services and have all kinds of initiatives within our emergency department and outside to reduce those transfer delays. And I think if you actually looked across Eastern Ontario, I think we've done better than a lot of places in terms of the delays and the offloading wait times, but there's still more work to do. I am a big believer in community paramedicine. It takes 2 years to graduate a community paramedic. They do there's nothing better than to go into a home if you meet someone who has a chronic illness and you have someone come in a uniform with a supportive visit and help you. It saves a lot of emerge visits, and it's been demonstrated, so I'm a huge proponent of it. But when we're in, if we weren't in this place where they were being pulled in two different directions, it would be much better to have them be part of that solution of the outside of the walls of the hospital, keeping people aging with chronic illness in the community. So I appreciate there's a demand on them both ways right now.
Okay. And my second question is the situation with the mentally, the people that need assistance that go to the hospital. Do we have enough psychiatrists in Belleville to deal with the situation with patients going to the hospital? Do we have enough beds in the hospital for that kind of a situation? So it's sort of a two-part.
So for the first answer is easy. We do not have enough psychiatrists at the hospital, and that is an incredible issue and a burden for the psychiatrists who work so hard at Quinte Health. But our bigger issue is having addiction services in the community. As you know, I think we have a new leader at Hastings, Prince Edward CMHA. I'm very optimistic about her leadership and building some programs in the community. I think last week, we had an incredible number of overdoses that came into the emergency department. It has a huge impact on the team and the services there. But addiction services start in the community, and it's another great example of we need to go upstream and support people with addictions and mental health services so that they don't need to come to the hospital in that type of situation.
Councillor Alsop?
Just one question. How many beds do we have on the mental health issue?
18. And I will say, we have an amazing mental health unit at Quinte. One of the most early things when I came, just so incredibly impressed by the caliber of the team and the services that they provide.
Councillor Alsop?
Great, thank you, Chair, and through you to Mrs. Dobb. Thank you so much for coming today. We saw in your slideshow some of the successes that you've had recently in terms of physician recruitment in internal medicine, emergency medicine, and peds, as well as the 40 locums. Could you talk to us a little bit about the programs that led to those successes, and how much does QHC spend on a yearly basis in terms of physician recruitment? And I have one more question afterwards.
Sure. Well, I may have to ask Susan to help me out a little bit on the exact numbers. So, Susan, I don't know, would you like to answer that question more specifically?
Sure. So the successes were focusing on international medical graduates. Quite a few of them have come through our contracts and with recruitment firms, and ensuring that we're creating a condition that makes it easy for international medical graduates to move back to Canada and practice here in Belleville. As far as our budget for physician recruitment is about $100,000 a year, and I can tell you that we overspent that by about $50,000 last year.
Great, thank you. And the second question had to do with the slide you had about the SDH risk rates. I don't know if you're able to pull that up quickly, just so we can use it as a reference.
Sure.
But it looked like province-wide it was about 48% of Ontario is in that low risk 1 to 3 category. But then I look across the QHC catchment area, and it appears that we have nobody in that category, which makes up 50% of Ontario almost. Could you explain to me why that might be the case, and what are the factors that would lead to quite a disparity?
Yeah, so I think that the one on the top is really for emerge visits, so it's a subset, and what it's trying to suggest is that we have a much higher number of visits going into the medium and high risk category. I don't know, they're not exactly sure why those numbers are blank at the top, but I can follow up on that.
Yeah, just a little strange to look at when you see it's
Yeah.
sort of half of Ontario, then nobody in our area.
Yeah.
It's very troubling.
Well, if you look on the bottom, so the bottom actually is probably, one is a subset of the population, and the bottom is actually the whole population. So you see on the bottom that for QHC, the Quinte Health region, it's about 9% of the population that fits in the 1 to 3. So those numbers in the total population you see on the bottom, that's representative of all the population. So I apologize, the first one is a subset.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Chad?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering about just a bit of clarity around that statement that you had made, operating at 100 beds over what you are funded by the ministry for. What kind, is that 100 beds like hospital-wide, or is that specific to the ER? Is that specific to oncology?
It's medicine beds. So it's
Medicine
medicine
beds.
specifically, and they're either unfunded or underfunded. So some of them are funded, but at not the rate that most hospitals would get funded at an acute care rate. And I think that's notionally because in the past, Quinte Health had a much higher rate of ALC, or alternate level of care, which we brought down quite a bit. But the other are just pure growth, and they're medicine beds.
So medicine beds is specific to the emergency department?
No, it's an
or-
inpatient. So if you, I'll just give you a quick example. If you came to the hospital and you had a chronic illness, let's say, and you were very ill, you would be admitted into a medicine unit. And those medicine units are where our bed growth has been.
Okay, so this
So
doesn't
not in the
have-
emergency department.
Okay, so it wouldn't have any impact on wait times in the emergency room?
It does. It would have an impact on wait times only in that you have more people who are needed to be admitted into beds.
Right, okay, I understand. Thank you for that clarity.
Welcome.
My second question is surrounding the oncology unit. So in my particular case, I'm on the road 2 hours every single day, traveling with my husband, who is diagnosed with 4th-stage cancer last month. And so going to Kingston for not radiology.
Radiation?
Radiation, thank you. That has been an incredible drain on us, and I would imagine pretty much every person who has ever been faced with this before across our little municipality. So I was wondering, is funding for things like our oncology unit specific to the size of our municipality? Is that one of the reasons that we don't have a radiation section of our oncology here in Belleville?
That's a great question. I'm very sorry to hear about your husband, and I hope that maybe sometime we'll be able to provide some support locally. So there is, it used to be called Cancer Care Ontario. Now it's Ontario Health that does all the cancer planning for the province. And they are the ones who designate and decide where these services go. And sometimes it's a volume. You need a certain volume before you can actually capably, and from a quality perspective and from a safety perspective, offer a service like that. But things change quickly. And so be it many, many years ago, we didn't have an oncology program, and perhaps nobody thought it was possible to bring one to Belleville. And now there is a very large oncology program that includes people being able to get local chemotherapy, which similarly makes a huge difference to people. Quite honestly, my interest is not growing medicine beds and growing emergency department visits. Our interest is building broader, larger surgical programs, cardiac programs, oncology programs, and this is part of the reason why we need to create places and supports for populations so that we can create capacity and supports for these other populations that cannot be done outside the walls of the hospital.
Okay, I need a motion. Do you still have time? I know you're on a tight schedule.
I could take one.
One more? Okay, Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you this afternoon, President. Just some notes listening to you and probably a question or two. Off the top, you talked about the different challenges for different communities. And your first challenge for the city of Belleville, you referred to was the age of population, aging demographic.
And the social determinants of health, the
Okay,
combination.
So that's the first one. Then you talk about primary care services for our residents. And then you touched on the relationship with Quinte Gardens, that there's 24 beds there. I find that that's interesting. And outreach, building relationships, partnership, how's that going and how long has that been going?
Quinte Gardens been up and operational about 2 years, and our biggest challenge there is to grow a program like that, you have to recruit staff. So the program development isn't the hard part, and the partnership isn't the hard part. It's trying to find the staff to actually support the service. So partnership and building a great program, but recruitment has been challenging. But it's been up and operating. It had a slow start. And we probably operated with about 12 beds last year, and we finally got up to 18, and then the ministry gave us more money to go up to 24.
All right. Okay, so here are the final two questions, and then I'll sit down. And I know it's been a grind for everybody at Quinte Healthcare over the last 3 years with the pandemic and the stress level that all of us are going through, but hospital workers that were dealing with individuals that were sick. They're in the front line, so I can appreciate what you did, and I thank you. Now, in the wait times, there was a report when I knew you were coming, I looked it up. The average wait time in Ontario, the last study I read, was 12.8 hours. And I can go back 2019, 2016, 2015, 2011, 2009, and I'm willing to bet it's still the same number. So I want you to address why do you think that still is? And I was on some American social media platforms on the weekend looking at healthcare and what they're doing for doctor recruitment. And all these communities in the States are having this thing called Passport USA. They're coming after Canadians with $15,000 signing bonuses, $25,000 signing bonuses. We saw that maybe 20 years ago where they were pulling away talent. Are they back doing that again? So there's your two questions. Why the wait times haven't increased, and are the Americans pulling talent from our country?
So the one thing about wait times, and I don't mean to confuse the issue, is there are different types of wait times. So there are wait times for low acuity. How long does it take you to get in and out of the hospital? If you have something low acuity, there is something that is more moderate acuity, how long it takes you, and then there's the wait times to actually get to an inpatient bed. And the wait times that have become extremely concerning for people have been the wait times to get to an inpatient bed. So if you're really sick and you come in the hospital and you need to be admitted, how long does it take you to get up to those? Those numbers have gone up and up and up over the last number of years, and I think those are the ones that you hear a lot about that are most concerning. In fact, in Belleville and Trenton, one of the areas I didn't talk about, one of the other innovations is we reimagined our medicine and internal medicine program. They redid it together, a whole new way that incorporates nurse practitioners. And we have seen significant improvements at both Belleville and Trenton for time to inpatient bed. Where our hours are going up right now is it's in the emergency department. And I think you're going to continue to see them go across the province. Belleville's a classic example. On a typical day, we would usually have 2 physicians in the emerge, sometimes 3. If you are down to 1, it is just going to take longer. And that's the bigger issue. If you are quite ill, you're going to be seen. But if you are in those lower acuity groups, that 1 and 2, it is going to take you a lot longer to be seen right now. And this is where there are alternatives available. There are some virtual supports available. Some are for payment, but some you can access if you have OHIP. So we've been trying to get the word out for people. Pharmacies now can actually help you with things like urinary tract infections, pink eye, ticks. All these things used to come to the hospital, so there's still opportunities to educate people, and that there are other places to go.
Okay, final question then. You mentioned 150 new hires.
Yes.
Have you lost anybody to the Americans with that going to work there? Has Quinte Healthcare lost any?
Not that we are aware of either a physician or nurses. I think the biggest issue with nursing is agency nursing, and there's certainly a lot of nurses, some nurses who have selected that path, but I do not think we have seen anybody move to the U.S.
Need a motion to receive. Councillor Brown, Councillor Chapman, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Laurie Hubert of KPMG. Will make a deputation to council. Reports to item refers to 8A1.
Yes. It's your auditor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here before you today to speak to the highlights of our financial statement audit for fiscal 2022. I will keep my remarks brief in case there are some great questions that I'd be more than happy to answer. I was here a few weeks ago and walked through our audit plan, our audit findings with the Finance Committee, and certainly the short version of the fiscal 2022 audit is that there are no significant findings, nothing significant came to our attention, and certainly the quality of the books and records are high. In terms of our audit, where we are, in terms of the status, our audit is complete. We have included in the financial statement package, my presentation really is in tandem with management's financial report in the agenda later on. Our draft audit report is a clean audit report where we state, in our opinion, we believe the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial activities for the year ended December 31, 2022. In terms of findings, in terms of the numbers, through the course of our audit, the draft financial statements that are included as part of your package today were the same financial statements that were provided to us at the start of the audit. So really what that means to you is the quality of the books and records are certainly high and should give you comfort through the course of the year in terms of the financial reporting that you are receiving. As part of any financial statement audit, we are very much required to gain an understanding of the significant processes that culminate into the financial reporting process. We've done that again this year. To the extent there are any significant deficiencies or any areas of control that we believe are an area of concern, we are required to share those with you. Again, similar theme, happy to report there's nothing to bring to your attention here today. In terms of the accounting policies and the auditing standards, there was nothing new and significantly different this year in fiscal 2022. You will see there will be some changes coming forth in fiscal 2023, but we've already started those conversations with management to make sure they're in a great position come the end of fiscal December 31, 2023. So those are my remarks here today. Very brief, but certainly would welcome any questions. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for deputation? I guess great job, staff, and great job on your part too. So, kudos. We'll give a clap to the treasurer. I need a motion to receive. To be received and reported. To refer to report item 8A1. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. I need a motion to go in committee of the whole. The council will rise and go into committee of the whole to hear and consider reports, passing recommendations and resolutions with Councillor Thompson in the chair. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Carr, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, report items. The agenda shall include under reports items that warrant individual attention from council. And 8A1, City of Belleville 2022 Consolidated Financial Statements, DF 2023-12, PDF resolution that the City Council approved the City of Belleville's audited 2022 Consolidated Financial Statement. We need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Alsop. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Item 8A2, City of Belleville 2024 Capital Budget Timeline, DF 2023-13, resolution that council approved the recommendation of the Finance Committee. I was outlined in the Director of Finance Treasury Report number DF 2023-13 and approved the 2024 Capital Budget Timeline and Community Engagement Strategy. We need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Carr, Councillor Chatton. Any questions? All in favor? Well, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we reviewed this at the Finance Committee, and Chair Councillor Enright Miller's away. I just wanted to make comment that with this policy, and appreciate the input from staff, provide a timeline for council so that council members know exactly where the budget process is and where it's being worked on behind the scenes. You know, going forward, obviously, our asset management plan and a 10-year capital plan is going to play a big role as to how this gets rolled out. But the other most important thing is the community engagement piece that comes with budgeting. A lot of times, or in the past, we've seen where the draft budget will come to the council or be released a few weeks in advance of the budget meeting, and a very short window of time for the members of the public to see it, review, comment, contact their counselor, what have you. So this here just puts it into a more of a robust policy where there is actually a citizen engagement, and the media tool that's provided with this document has a number of measures in terms of getting the word out as to what the budget is. And part of it's also the education piece of how a budget is put together, and then how the money's allocated, that type of thing. And that seemed to be lacking over the years, and certainly the committee felt that it was necessary to ensure that there was adequate and robust citizen engagement. So, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. A question most likely to Director of Finance. My experience, my observation would be that the capital budget and the operating budget tend to happen towards the end of Q1, which results in later spend, deferred spend, probably is the best way. So as the staff wait for the capital budget process and the operating budget to be completed, in this case the capital budget, before they can actually go ahead and prepare the business cases and send them out. With the timelines that are recommended here, which I wholeheartedly support, which is to move it back, will it in fact result in a one-time bubble in that we will be able to hopefully make purchases sooner in the fiscal year, but for instance, 2024. However, things that were approved in 2023 will be carrying over. So will there be a one-time bulge in the actual expenses?
Director?
Through the chair to Councillor Brown. That's a great point. There will be monitoring of our capital progress reports, and we always keep a keen eye when we're bringing forward the capital budget plan to do evaluation of where our current capital projects sit to assure that they're accomplishable and that we'll see them being completed, as well as the work that will be proposed. The reason that we do pick an earlier point in time is to get ahead of all of that tendering, make sure that we're getting the best prices and that we're getting them out within the construction window. And staff and directors are always very responsible in bringing forward accomplishable items. That's a key underlying aspect of the capital budgeting process.
Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A3, City of Belleville Financial Control Policy, DF 2023-14, resolution that council approve the recommendation of Finance Committee as outlined in the Director of Finance Treasurer's report number DF 2023-14 and approve the revised policy for the budget and financial control policy. We need a mover to Councillor Chatton, Councillor Carr. Any questions? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. No questions, but I just wanted to highlight too that again, in the Finance Committee, one of the things that we had requested and it was reviewed by staff is included is departmental operating plans that will come along with the budget. I have said before that I think it's important that we measure results that occur with the budget allocations that are done on an annual basis, and this will just give council an idea from each department as to the plans and the anticipated results that they hope to achieve with those funding allocations every year. And I look forward to our performance committee that hopefully will be convening a meeting in short order as I look at the chair across the way, that we'll be able to then start measuring some of these results. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A4, Traffic Calming Pilot Project Update, ENG 2023-09, resolution that staff proceed with the traffic calming pilot projects to install speed bumps on Yeoman Street as outlined in the report, ENG 2023-09. We need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Brown. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A5, Contract ENG 2023-05, Murney Street and Henry Street Water Main Replacement and Road Reconstruction Project, ENG 2023-10, resolution that the tender submission from Coburg Development Services be accepted for the contract ENG 2023-5, Murney Street and Henry Street Water Main Replacement and Road Reconstruction Project in the amount of $4,203,070.35 plus $546,399.15 HST for the total amount of $4,749,469.50, this being the lowest cost tender received, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to fix the corporate seal. Mover, Councillor Alsep, Councillor Kelly. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. 862, supply and delivery of one marine waste collection drone, FM 2023-10, resolution that request for proposal submission from Parolu Marine Canada be accepted for the supply and delivery of one marine waste collection drone in the amount of $100,660.25 plus $13,085.83 HST for a total of $113,746.08, this being the only qualified proposal received. And then the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporate seal of the city of Belleville, and the city clerk be authorized to fix the corporate seal. Mover, Councillor Alsep, Councillor Chatton. Any questions? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd like to have a city staff member, just for those who are watching today, and get an idea what this drone will actually do, because there's a couple of people asking me about it. So if it's Mr. Reed to speak to that, I don't know who might be.
No, it's Councillor, or Mr. Chatton's report, so our Director Dean will report for his behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Kelly. I'm very pleased to speak to this item. It is certainly a significant investment, but it is one additional tool in our toolkit to contribute to the cleanup of the Great Lakes, which is a broader initiative, the Great Lakes Plastic Cleanup, which is a partnership between Pollution Probe and the Council of the Great Lakes region. And this, quite recently, Environmental Services won an award for the significant number of litter traps that have been installed in catch basins throughout the city. I believe it's 21. And our department recently installed 2 sea bins in the harbor, which also attract floating debris. So this particular device is a GPS controlled drone that floats in the water in the areas that will be out in the outer harbor area, that can be controlled remote controlly or through programmed pre-programmed controls. And so it's basically traversing the water areas to find debris that's floating and sucks it up, and it's a fairly large device, so it has a significant capacity. So it is another one of our greening initiatives, and I don't like to spread unconfirmed rumors, but one of our harbor staff actually believes it could be the first drone device on the Great Lakes, but don't quote me on that. We're certainly going to be looking into this, and it's a great pilot, I think, for Lake Ontario as well.
Any other questions? Councillor Chatton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. If we could just touch just for a second on this, the safety aspect for how we used to clean up the Bay Area, and how much that drone is going to help facilitate a lot better safe measures for staff that are operating that project.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Chatton. Traditionally, items identified either would be out of reach, or we would have staff in boats and other equipment having to try to reach over and physically pull floating debris into the boats, or trying to reach from shore. So of course they're having to use flotation devices, and there's always a risk of injury or falling in. So this is certainly another measure to protect our staff and do it much more efficiently, because this type of equipment can do it a lot faster than staff manually trying to pull in pieces of debris.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A7, supply and delivery of one 7,000-pound lift capacity forklift, FM2023-6. And the resolution is that the request for proposal submission from Toromont Industries be accepted for the supply and delivery of one 7,000-pound lift capacity forklift in the amount of $62,355.50 plus $8,106.22 HST, for a total amount $70,461.72. This being the most qualified proposal received, and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporate city of Belleville, and the city clerk be authorized to fix the corporate seal, and that the 2023 capital budget item 23-1-067 be reduced by $22,400, and that the item 2023-1-052 be increased by $22,400 for a total amount of $62,400. We need a mover and a seconder. The mayor and Councillor Alsep. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A8, supply and delivery of 2 Zambonis, FM 2023-07, resolution that in accordance with the Section 30.3 sole and single sourcing approval and reporting of the city purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the quotation from Zamboni Company Limited be accepted for the supply and delivery to Zambonis, $650 in the amount of $304,511.96 plus $39,586.55 HST for a total amount of $344,098.51, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the city of the corporation, the city of Belleville, and the city clerk be authorized to fix the corporate seal, and that the 2023 capital budget item 23-1.0067 QSWC annual renewal of the assets be reduced by $54,600, and the item 23-1-031-292-04 Zamboni replacement, and that 23-1-0032 294-0 replacement each be increased by $27,300 to establish a new individual budget amount of $152,300. We need a mover. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Alsop. Questions? Councillor Kelly.
Okay. Well, through you, Chair. I read the report, and it was near the end of the report. I saw the word I wanted to see, because we had a conversation with council about resurfacing and getting Zambonis. And I met with the Zamboni folks at AMO just to talk to them about some of the new models coming out. And the key words in this report was electric ice resurfacer. And it wasn't until page 3 that I saw that word. So I was really impressed. So I'd like to ask Dean Hustwick, the Director of Community Services. This is part of that greening initiative you talked about a few minutes ago. This is a good move forward for the city.
Director.
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Kelly, thank you very much. This absolutely is another project within the Facilities Management Division's greening initiative, our ongoing contributions to managing climate change, and we're very proud of taking this step. They are indeed electric. I apologize that that wasn't highlighted up front, but originally, as you saw with the last item on the forklift, these days it's very difficult to estimate costs because they're changing so rapidly, especially on manufactured products. Forklift cost a lot more than it would have a short time ago. The 2 Zambonis were estimated quite high initially, both because electric versions are more expensive, but also we thought that we would have to run new electrical power from the south end of the CAA arena to the north, but staff have identified an alternative closer, so that's saving some costs. Now, the original budget was $500,000. $250,000 was identified to come from grants, but as we stated in the report, unfortunately, we couldn't find any grants. So in terms of the net cost, it's actually over budget, but the overall cost of the project is about $200,000 under the original estimate. So we're very pleased with this, and hopeful that council will support it. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
I just wanted to add another thing. I was looking up about electric Zambonis and some interesting tidbits. It's $4 on average to ice a rink with the old technology, old Zamboni. And with electric Zambonis, it's $1 to do the ice surface. And in Alberta, they'll give you $50,000 a municipality to go electric. With their Zamboni in BC, $5,000. And in Ontario, $0. So maybe that's something that we can work with the province on a green initiative to support municipalities. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A9, can I have a motion to table this. We've had a request from Councillor Millet to have this tabled, Councillor Brown, Councillor Carr, and it's tabled. We don't need a motion, vote on that, do we? Oh, all in favor? I didn't realize you needed a vote, sorry. I just knew it, this. 8810, PRKS 2023, Build Design Hillcrest Park Improvement Phase 2, 3v3 Basketball Courts, MOPD-2023-06, PRKS 2023-08, Design Build Hillcrest Park Improvement Phase 2, 3v Basketball Courts PDF. Resolution.
Chair, moved as written.
We have a mover and a seconder, the Councillor, or Mayor Ellis. Any questions? All in favor? Oh, Councillor.
Who would this go to, I guess? I'm just wondering where we're at, cost of this park. I know we passed some pickleball courts last council meeting or council meeting before, and if you could get me those numbers, I know it's not fair to ask you tonight, but if you could maybe give us an update of the total cost of what it's going to end up being.
Mr. Reed?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8A11, request regarding the site plan securities owner, Aldergate Homes Incorporated, file number B75-966, APS-2023-16, resolution that report APS-2023-16 and the request from Aldergate Home Incorporated to reduce the site plan security for on-site work from the calculated $1,200,000 relating the construction of the proposed 88 seniors apartment building at 7 Aldersgate Drive be received. You need a motion, Councillor Chatton and Councillor Alsop. Questions? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. My question is, has the option of the pay-on-demand surety bond been discussed with the Aldersgate Home Group? And were they acceptant of going with a surety bond versus the pay in full?
Director Thomas, sorry. Ashton, sorry.
Sorry. So you're asking about yeah. Yeah, so I think so some of that surety bond was brought forward or requested by the Quinte Home Builders Association. We've never implemented that in our city yet. I do know that some of the feedback has been like a lot of that is for sort of larger corporations. So they do have a rate, I believe. Manager Pension was talking to finance today, and potentially based on the interest rate, but this is sort of theory, what it would cost them to do that surety bond. But I think they do have to have equity in place before they do get the surety bond, so we're not sure. And I think Manager Pension did follow up with them, and I believe they hadn't actually considered or weren't able to sort of utilize that tool. So they've requested the reduction to $100,000. So there is risk involved for the city for that, but I guess they have requested it because in the past there was a couple of developments that had requested the same, a reduced security, and they were granted that by the city.
Councillor Brown.
So if I may, and I appreciate a nonprofit organization. It's not like most have scads of dollars laying around, particularly trying to move forward an important project like this. Director Ashton mentioned that there was a risk to the organization, and I wondered if we could just expand on what the risk might be for us as council.
Director Ashton.
I think when, so in this case, it's a site plan, so their agreement, they have to do site works. And if they fail to do those site works, the security is used so that the city can go in and make those changes. Traditionally, we really haven't had to sort of cash any of those securities as a municipality. It's always, the risk is always there though, that a developer might walk away without finishing those requirements and the city will have to go in there. Typically, yeah, we don't have to go down that route. Having this security enough is sort of motivation for the developer to complete their required sort of site works.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Any other question, Councillor Brown? No. Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. 8B, consent items. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed, consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. And we'll go around. Well, Councillor Brown?
Only that I have a conflict with 8B4.
So what should we deal with that one first? Okay, okay, that's right. Councillor Chatton?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kelly?
No, thank you.
Your mayor? Councillor Kerr? Sorry.
There we go. 8B1, please.
Councillor Alsop?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we'll have to deal with 8B. That the consent items be approved with the exception of 8B1. And we need a mover and seconder. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Chatton, all in favor? Yeah. Okay, so that's been carried. So we got 8B1, Councillor Carr.
I'll move the motion.
And 8B1, let me read it first here, sorry. 8B1, that the City Belleville's Homeless Summit follow-up CAO's 2023-06 resolution in pursuit of the Chief Administrative Officer report number CAO-2023-06. City Council endorsed the aims and measures developed at the Belleville Homeless Summit, and that forward the aims and measures to the Hastings County Community and Human Services. And Councillor Carr is moving that. We have a seconder. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just briefly, appreciate the CEO for compiling all of this information, as well as staff in our communications department who compiled the results of the community surveys. And certainly good feedback information, and appreciate the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness that helped lead and coordinate the homelessness summit we had earlier in the year. It's important that these aims and measures now go off to Hastings County, to their joint committee, to send a message that the City of Belleville has some expectations with regards to our homelessness population. Clearly, there's work being done at Hastings County with the by name list and some coordinated access, and then in addition to that, we see and Ms. Dobb referred to it, the fact that we need more community crisis type resources, and so things such as the hub that's being proposed is part of the catchment, if you will, in order to assist people that are vulnerable. And the important thing, and I'm going to say it again because it needs to be repeated as part of public education, homelessness is an issue in every single community. There's no community busing homeless people to other communities. And that, quite frankly, is just a scapegoat that you don't want to recognize that there's a problem in the community and you would rather wash your hands of it. When in fact, what we really need to do as a community is work collectively at solutions. And as we continue to see high housing prices continue, despite the slow in the actual purchase, more and more people are falling off at the bottom end. And so by having at least a by name list to know who's experiencing homelessness and then be able to provide coordinated access, hopefully we start seeing some prioritizing and some matching for services. And clearly, obviously, we need a lot more in our housing inventory, including affordable housing. Again, you know, I think it's important that we call on the province that we need a significant cash infusion and capital investment into social housing. We have a wait list, you know, give or take of 3,500 people for social housing in Hastings County, and the large percentage is in the city of Belleville. That's shameful. There's no other way to say it. We need the province to step up and actually house the people of Ontario. And so, but again, I don't want to go too far down that road other than to say that these aims and measures, I think, are reasonable and achievable. And I know in consultation with Hastings County, they look forward to get to work on them. Thank you.
Councillor Chatton.
Thank you. I just have one small amendment just to make to my colleagues' comments. You said 3,400 people are on the wait list, and it's actually much more than that. It's 3,400 families. And therefore, we're looking at an incredible increase to that number that are on that wait list. Thank you.
Any other statement? Questions? All in favor of it? That's carried. 8AC, that the agenda items be received with the exception of, and we'll start with Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you.
Councillor Chatton?
No, thank you.
Councillor Brown?
No, thank you.
Councillor Alsop?
No, thank you.
Councillor Carr?
No, thank you.
Your worship?
No, thank you.
So we need a motion, we receive all three. Councillor Alsop, Councillor Chatton, all in favor? That's carried. And the next item is rise and report. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Carr, Councillor Chatton, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Good job, Councillor Thompson. Okay, the following bylaws, first reading and second reading of bylaws, members may debate bylaw under the consideration. Need a motion for bylaw 2023, 124, 125, 126, 127, and 128. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Carried. Second reading and discussion, bylaw 2023, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128. Moved by Councillor Alsop. Councillor Carr, discussion. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just briefly on bylaw 2023, 124, the community safety zones. We've done a lot of work in the committee, and thank Councillor Thompson as chair of transportation. We've increased the number, and we're proposing an increase to the number of our community safety zones. We all receive lots of speeding complaints, and that's not the purview of council. That's the purview of the Belleville Police Service to enforce the Highway Traffic Act. And but what we're finding is that areas where there's high concentration of students or children related to parks or recreation facilities, that we remind drivers that they have to take measures in order to drive safely, drive in an obedient fashion according to the law. And if you don't, the fines are double in that area. And interestingly enough, I got some data from staff back on June 16th that we had some radar speed spy data on Canifton Road. The average annual daily total along Canifton Road is 10,115 vehicles. And out of those, 6,585 were speeding. So 85% of the traffic on that road was actually in violation of the speed limit. And to give that as an example, if that's occurring there, it's occurring all across our city, and we have to make sure that our streets are safe, particularly when we see a lot more active transportation, whether it be pedestrians or cyclists, things of that nature. We have to make sure our roads are safe. And so by creating these additional community safety zones, it's a measure to make our community a little bit safer. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All in favor? Carried. Third and final reading of bylaws, 2023, 124, 125, 126, 127, and 128. Moved by Councillor Alsop. Councillor Chatton, all in favor? Carried. New business? Motions? Notice of motions? Announcements? Councillor Thompson?
Just one brief announcement. The Koreans were here for a number of days. From what I understand, they had a great weekend. I know the mayor may speak a little more about it, but they left this morning for Anchor Falls. Didn't hear any complaints from them. They had great meals and a great time, and we look forward to having them back again in a couple of years, and we look forward to some of us going to Korea next year. But great to have them, and I commend the staff for what they've done for the Koreans. They went out of their way, so congratulations to the staff that everybody did for them, so thank you.
Or Councillor Kelly.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It reminded me of my grade 3 teacher saying my name twice. Okay, I have a few announcements. I have a proclamation on July the 22nd from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. A celebration of life for Georgina Thompson is being held at Swix Lions Pavilion. Mrs. Georgina Thompson was known in Belleville as one of the most accomplished community leaders in healthcare, politics, and business. She joined Belleville City Council in 2003, later became chair of the Southeast Local Health Integration Network. Georgina was a highly regarded worker for all the people, councils, and causes she could represent in order to better others' lives. Known for her engaging personality and tirelessness, this registered nurse was also the founder and president of All Care Health Services, which served not only our community, but as far as Bancroft and Kingston. In her lifetime, Mrs. Thompson was the recipient of Quinny's Woman in Business Award, the Harry Jerome Award for Best Achievement for Black Business, the Ontario Premier's Award for Outstanding Contributions to Health Sciences, and an Award of Merit by the Quinte Chapter Registered Nurses Association. Her husband, Ken, would like everyone whose life his wife had touched to come to be a part of the celebration and celebrating this amazing woman and all she has done for the community. And that's happening on July the 22nd from 2 to 4 at Swix Lions Pavilion. Next announcement is the city's pushing and receiving lots of positive feedback with our Workplace Inclusion Charter, which launched in March. We're pleased to have 12 workplaces on board. Quinte Healthcare were amongst the first to sign the charter. The work of the DEI committee is focused on communication awareness campaigns and educational opportunities related to diversity, equity, and inclusion at BGH. The maternal child team on Quinte 7 at BGH has done a great job creating an environment in which patient diversity is recognized and supported through things like updated signage and policies with gender-inclusive language. And Trenval has just signed the charter saying it is complete affirmation of the commitment they have already made to the 50-30 challenge. It's top of mind during their board recruitment and selection process. They're committed to providing businesses with resources and best practices for supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in their workplace. And to get more information on the Workplace Inclusion Charter, go to the city's website. Belleville launched into this charter back in March of this year. And a couple of personal announcements. We all know this couple, and it's Bob and Sylvia Doyle. Last week was their last day at McDonald's in Belleville on Friday, and Bob and Sylvia, let's be honest, that millions of dollars have been raised with the Golden Arches under the leadership of Bob and Sylvia. Think of the BGH Foundation, Children's Foundation. Bob was recently, a couple years ago, a Lifetime Achievement Belleville Chamber of Commerce Award winner. Think of the thousands of students that have worked with the Doyle family over the years before they've gone on to college and university. Think of the dollars raised for Coffee Day with the Alzheimer's Society, McHappy Day. We've all had a chance to work there. Bob and Sylvia, thank you for everything you did for the city, and enjoy your retirement. Good people. And finally, last Thursday, it was the hottest day so far of the summer of 2023, and I was involved in the Grace Inn charity fundraising golf tournament at Trillium Wood. They had two tournaments, one in the morning tee off, one in the afternoon. Over 250 golfers were there raising funds, and the city of Belleville had a team in it. Matt McDonald Rod Bove and Brandon Ferguson. I couldn't have asked for a better group to play with. Fine gentlemen on the golf course, all great athletes, so thank you for that special day. And Jody Jenkins was involved with, former councillor, was involved in a special day too, the longest drive competition, the first of its kind ever, I believe, in Canada. And they had a record turnout of fans for that event, and that's something for the city to build on with the long ball competition. All the athletes were from around the world, and they were in Belleville for 48 hours. And you see these athletes on television, on NBC in the States. It's a growing sport. And thanks to all the volunteers who helped out with that event. And there was a young gentleman from Japan that won it, left town with $20,000. So that's what I have for you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you. I'd like to proclaim July 22nd as Fragile X Syndrome Awareness Day. Fragile X syndrome is the most common known cause of an inherited intellectual disabilities and the leading known single gene cause of autism. Fragile X occurs when a single gene shuts down, a gene vital to normal brain function. Raising awareness for Fragile X is crucial as it helps to accelerate progress toward effective treatments and ultimately a cure. Last year, 385 locations around the world lit up to recognize Fragile X syndrome on July 22nd, helping bring a new level of awareness for this syndrome. This energy was able to highlight the research that's going on and brought significant hope to families everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more announcements? Seeing none, I need a resolution for confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2023-129, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on July 10th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 10th day of July 23. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Oslop, all in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Carr, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody.